What if one conversation could change the entire trajectory of your life? That's exactly what happened to me, thanks to my incredible grandmother. Her words weren't just advice, they were a lifeline that pulled me through my darkest moments and completely reshaped my perspective on overcoming life's toughest challenges. Stick around to hear the full, powerful story. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people find the strength and wisdom they need during difficult times. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Maya Richardson, and in November of 2024 I hit rock bottom. I don't say that lightly or for dramatic effect. I truly believed I had nothing left. No job, no savings, no hope. Just a mountain of bills. A 7-year-old daughter who deserved so much better, and a crushing weight of failure that made it hard to breathe some mornings. The day it all came crashing down was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were usually my favorite day of the week at work. Or at least, they used to be when I still had work. That morning, I sat in my small Chicago apartment, staring at my laptop screen, reading the same job rejection email for the 10th time. It was the 5th rejection in 2 weeks. We regret to inform you that we have decided to move forward with other candidates, better candidates, younger candidates probably. Candidates who hadn't taken a 6-month gap to deal with a messy divorce. Candidates whose resumes didn't have that awkward hole that screamed, damaged goods. I closed the laptop harder than I meant to, and the sharp sound made Jasmine look up from her breakfast. My daughter, my beautiful, innocent 7-year-old who still believed her mama could fix anything. You okay, mommy? She asked, her brown eyes wide with concern that no child should have to feel. I'm fine, baby, I lied, forcing a smile. Just tired, but I wasn't fine, I was drowning. 8 years. I had given 8 years of my life to Davidson and Brooks marketing. Late nights, missed family gatherings, sacrificed weekends. All of it poured into a company that let me go with a 2-week severance and a generic, good luck, email. They called it restructuring. I called it betrayal. And the divorce. That was its own special kind of hell. Marcus and I had been together for 10 years, married for 8. We'd built a life together, or so I thought. Turns out, he'd been building a different life with his coworker Simone for the better part of 2 years. When I found out, I didn't just lose a husband. I lost my best friend, my financial security, and every ounce of trust I had in my own judgment. How had I not seen it? How had I been so blind? The divorce was finalized in May, and I thought the worst was behind me. I threw myself into work, determined to prove I was fine, that I didn't need him, that I could handle it all on my own. Then came the September layoffs, and suddenly I was alone in a way I'd never experienced before. Alone and terrified. That Tuesday morning, after I dropped Jasmine off at school, I came home and did something I hadn't allowed myself to do in months. I cried. Not pretty, silent tears, but the ugly, gut-wrenching kind that leave you gasping for air. I sat on my bathroom floor and let it all out. The anger, the shame, the overwhelming fear that I was failing my daughter, that I'd never recover from this, that at 34 years old, my life was effectively over. When the tears finally stopped, I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger. Hollow eyes, tired face, shoulders slumped in defeat. This wasn't the Maya I used to know. This wasn't the confident woman who'd graduated top of her class, who'd landed that dream job at 26, who'd believed she could take on the world. This was a woman who'd lost everything, including herself. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from my dad. Don't forget Thanksgiving is this Thursday at Grandma Dot's. She's expecting you and Jasmine. Love you, sweetheart. Thanksgiving. I'd completely forgotten. The thought of sitting around a table, pretending to be grateful while my life was in shambles, made me want to crawl under my covers and never come out. But I knew I had to go. Jasmine loved these family gatherings, and Grandma Dot would never forgive me if I missed it. Besides, maybe being around family would help. Maybe seeing everyone else's normal, functional lives would give me some perspective, or at least distract me from my own disaster for a few hours. I had no idea that this Thanksgiving would change everything. I had no idea that my 78-year-old grandmother was about to save my life with nothing more than a kitchen conversation and 3 simple principles. All I knew in that moment, standing in my bathroom with swollen eyes and a broken spirit, was that I couldn't keep going like this. Something had to change. I just didn't know what or how. The next 2 days passed in a blur of job applications and forced smiles for Jasmine's sake. By Thursday morning, I was exhausted but determined to at least pretend things were okay. I dressed Jasmine in her favorite yellow dress, packed the sweet potato casserole I'd managed to make despite my fog of depression, and drove the 45 minutes to Grandma Dot's house in the suburbs. The moment we pulled up to her modest brick home with its neat garden and welcoming front porch, I felt something loosen in my chest. This house had always been a sanctuary. As a child, I'd spent countless summer afternoons here, helping Grandma tend her roses, listening to her stories, feeling safe and loved. Jasmine bounded out of the car and ran up the walkway. The front door opened before she even reached it, and there was Grandma Dot, small, sturdy, with silver hair pulled back in her signature bun, and those warm brown eyes that always seemed to see right through you. "There's my sunshine girl!" Grandma exclaimed, bending down to wrap Jasmine in a hug. I grabbed the casserole and followed more slowly, trying to arrange my face into something resembling happiness. But Grandma's eyes found mine over Jasmine's head, and I saw it, that flash of knowing, that look that said she saw past every mask I was wearing. "Maya, baby," she said softly as I reached the porch. "Come here." She pulled me into a hug, and for a second I almost broke again. Her embrace was firm and warm, and she smelled like vanilla and lavender just like she always had. For just a moment I let myself feel like a child again. Safe, protected, like someone else could carry the weight for a while. "I'm glad you're here," she whispered in my ear. "I've been worried about you." I pulled back, blinking away tears. "I'm okay, Grandma, just tired." She gave me a look that clearly said she didn't believe me, but she didn't push. Instead, she ushered us inside where the rest of the family was already gathered. My dad and his brothers were in the living room, arguing good-naturedly about football. My aunts were in the kitchen, laughing over some shared memory. Cousins were everywhere, and the house smelled like turkey and cornbread and home. For a few hours, I managed to lose myself in the warmth of family. I played with Jasmine and her cousins. I helped set the table. I even laughed at my Uncle James's terrible jokes. It felt almost normal, almost like I could be okay. But underneath it all, the darkness was still there waiting. Dinner was loud and chaotic in the best way. 23 people crammed around Grandma Dot's extended dining table, passing dishes, talking over each other, sharing stories and laughter. Jasmine sat between my dad and Aunt Cheryl, her face bright with happiness as she soaked up all the attention. I sat near the end of the table, picking at my food and smiling when appropriate. I could feel several pairs of eyes on me throughout the meal. My dad's concerned glances, Aunt Sharon's worried looks. They knew something was wrong, but nobody asked. Not yet. This was Thanksgiving after all. A time for gratitude and celebration, not for airing troubles. When Grandma stood to say grace, everyone fell silent. She closed her eyes and spoke in that steady, calm voice that had comforted generations of our family. "Lord, we thank you for this food, for this family, and for the strength to face whatever comes our way. We're grateful for the blessings, and we're grateful too for the struggles that teach us who we really are. Amen." I felt those words like a punch to the chest. Struggles that teach us who we really are. What was I supposed to learn from losing everything? That I was weak. That I couldn't handle life on my own. That I'd been foolish to ever think I had it all figured out. After dinner, the men retreated to watch football while the women began the massive task of cleaning up. I volunteered immediately, grateful for something to do with my hands. In the kitchen, my aunts chattered about their kids, their jobs, their husbands. Normal lives, stable lives. I stood at the sink, scrubbing dishes with more force than necessary, trying to ignore the tightness in my chest. "Maya, baby, can you help me with something in the pantry?" Grandma's voice was soft behind me. I dried my hands and followed her down the narrow hallway to her walk-in pantry. She flipped on the light and closed the door behind us, giving us a bubble of privacy away from the noise of the family. "Now," she said, turning to face me with her hands on her hips. "Tell me what's really going on." I opened my mouth to give her the same line I'd been feeding everyone. "I'm fine, just tired, everything's okay." But the words wouldn't come. Instead, looking into those knowing brown eyes, I felt my carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. "I can't do this anymore, Grandma," I whispered. "I just can't." "Can't do what, sweetheart?" "Any of it, all of it." The words started tumbling out faster and faster. "I lost my job 2 months ago. I've applied to 43 positions and gotten nothing but rejections. My savings are almost gone. I can barely pay rent. I'm a single mother with no income and no prospects, and I have no idea how I'm going to take care of Jasmine. I wake up every morning feeling like I can't breathe, like the walls are closing in. And the worst part, I feel like such a failure. I'm 34 years old, and I've lost everything: my marriage, my career, my confidence. Everything." My voice cracked on that last word, and suddenly I was crying again, right there in Grandma's pantry among the canned goods and boxes of cereal. She didn't say anything at first. She just pulled me into her arms and let me cry, rubbing my back in small circles the way she used to when I was little and had scraped my knee or lost a friend. "I'm sorry," I sobbed into her shoulder. "I didn't mean to fall apart like this. I'm trying so hard to keep it together, but I don't know how much longer I can." "Shh," she soothed. "No apologies. You hear me? Not for feeling what you're feeling." When my tears finally subsided, she pulled back and looked at me with an intensity I wasn't expecting. "Maya Richardson, you listen to me right now. You are not a failure. You are not broken. You are going through something incredibly difficult, yes. But you are still standing. You're still showing up for your daughter every single day. You're still fighting. That's not failure, baby. That's courage. It doesn't feel like courage, I said, wiping my eyes. It feels like barely surviving. Sometimes those are the same thing, she said quietly. She guided me to sit on a small step stool she kept in the corner, then pulled over a box to sit on herself, her knees almost touching mine. Let me tell you something, she began. Something I don't talk about much, but I think you need to hear it right now. I nodded, unable to speak. You know your grandfather died when I was 40 years old. You know I raised 5 children on my own after that. But what you don't know is how close I came to giving up completely in those first few months. I looked up in surprise. Grandma Dot was the strongest person I knew. I'd never imagined her giving up on anything. Your grandfather's death was sudden. Heart attack right there in our living room. One minute we were arguing about whether to buy a new car, the next minute he was gone. Just like that. She snapped her fingers. I had 5 kids. Your daddy was only 12 and baby Ruth was just 6. We had almost no savings, no life insurance. Nothing. Grandma, I had no idea. How could you? I didn't want any of you kids to know how scared I was back then. But Maya, I was terrified. I lay awake every single night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I was going to feed my children, wondering if I should sell the house, wondering if maybe they'd be better off with relatives who had more money, more stability. The thought of my strong, capable grandmother feeling that way made my heart ache. I applied for job after job after job, she continued. And you know what I heard? You're not qualified. You don't have enough experience. We need someone younger. I was a widow with 5 children and a high school education, and nobody wanted to take a chance on me. But you became a teacher, I said. You had a whole career. Eventually, yes. But not right away. First I had to work 3 jobs, cleaning houses during the day, working at a grocery store in the evenings, and taking and ironing on weekends. I barely slept. I barely saw my kids. And I felt like the worst mother in the world because I couldn't be there to help with homework or make nice dinners or do any of the things I thought a good mother should do. She paused, her eyes distant with memory. One night, about 6 months after your grandfather died, I sat in my car outside the grocery store after my shift, and I completely broke down. I cried so hard I thought I might be sick. I remember thinking I can't do this. I'm not strong enough. I'm going to fail these children. What happened? I asked softly. I sat in that car for over an hour, just crying and feeling sorry for myself. And then when I finally ran out of tears, something shifted. I realized something important, something that changed everything for me. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. I realized that I had a choice. I couldn't control what had happened to me. I couldn't bring your grandfather back. I couldn't make employers hire me or make money appear out of thin air. But I could control how I responded. I could control whether I gave up or kept fighting. And I could control whether I let this situation define me, or whether I used it to discover just how strong I actually was. I felt something stir in my chest, not hope exactly, but something close to it. A tiny spark of curiosity. That night in the car, I made myself 3 promises, Grandma continued. 3 principles that I've lived by ever since. And Maya, they're the reason I survived. They're the reason I eventually got my teaching certificate. They're the reason I was able to raise 5 children into good, strong adults. They're the reason I'm sitting here today, 78 years old and still standing. What were they? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She held up one finger. First, accept what is. Not what you wish it was, not what it used to be, not what you think it should be. What it actually is, right now. In a second finger. Second, act on what you can control. Stop wasting energy on things beyond your reach. Focus every ounce of strength you have on the small things you can actually change. A third finger. Third, trust that you're stronger than you think. You come from a long line of survivors, Maya. Your great-grandmother survived slavery. Your great-great-grandmother survived things I can't even imagine. That strength is in your blood, it's in your bones. You just have to believe it's there. I sat in silence, letting her words sink in. They were so simple, these 3 principles. Almost too simple. And yet something about them felt true in a way that all the self-help articles and motivational quotes I'd been reading hadn't. I know it sounds easy when I say it like that, Grandma said gently. But living it, that's the hard part. That takes practice. That takes courage. But Maya, if I could do it, a 40-year-old widow with no degree and 5 mouths to feed, then you can too. You're educated, you're talented, you're young. And most importantly, you're my granddaughter, which means you've got more strength in you than you realize. We sat in that pantry for another 20 minutes while Grandma told me more stories from those difficult years. She told me about the time she had to choose between buying groceries and paying the electric bill, and how she'd swallowed her pride and asked the church for help. She told me about going back to school at 43, taking night classes while still working 2 jobs, determined to become a teacher. She told me about the countless times she wanted to quit, to give up, to just let the weight of it all crush her. But she hadn't quit. She'd kept going, one day at a time, using those 3 principles as her anchor. The hardest part, she said, was accepting that it was okay to not be okay. I spent so much energy trying to pretend I had it all together, trying to be strong for everyone else. But real strength isn't about pretending you're fine when you're not. Real strength is admitting you're struggling and choosing to keep going anyway. Those words hit me like a wave. How much energy had I wasted trying to convince everyone, including myself, that I was handling everything just fine? "Thank you, Grandma," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I don't know if I can do what you did, but thank you for sharing this with me. It helps to know that someone I love and admire went through something similar and came out the other side." She squeezed my hand. "You can do it, baby. I know you can. And you're not alone. You've got family who loves you. You've got that beautiful little girl who needs you. And you've got those 3 principles now. Use them, live by them. Let them guide you when everything feels dark." We heard my Aunt Cheryl calling from the kitchen, wondering where we'd disappeared to. Grandma stood and helped me to my feet. "Come on," she said. "Let's go have some of my famous sweet potato pie before your uncles eat it all." I managed a real smile for the first time in weeks. "I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetheart. More than you know." We rejoined the family and I felt different somehow. Lighter, maybe. Or perhaps just a little less alone. I caught my dad watching me as I cut a slice of pie, and when our eyes met, I gave him a small nod that said, "I'm going to be okay." He smiled, relief evident on his face. The rest of the evening passed in a warm blur. I actually enjoyed myself, laughing at family stories, playing board games with the kids, feeling like a part of something bigger than my own problems. Jasmine was radiant, her belly full of good food and her heart full of love from her extended family. As we were getting ready to leave around 9 o'clock, Grandma walked us to the car. She gave Jasmine a long hug and slipped a $5 bill into her hand, for being such a good girl. Then she turned to me. "Drive safe," she said, pulling me into another embrace. "And remember what we talked about. One day at a time, Maya. One day at a time." "I will," I promised. "Thank you again, Grandma, for everything." She kissed my cheek and waved as we backed out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, I could see her standing on the porch, a small figure bathed in the warm glow of the porch light, watching us go. The drive home was quiet. Jasmine fell asleep within 10 minutes, exhausted from playing with her cousins all day. I drove through the dark Chicago streets, my mind replaying everything Grandma had told me. Accept what is. Act on what you can control. Trust that you're stronger than you think. Could it really be that simple? Could 3 basic principles actually help me navigate this impossible situation I found myself in? I didn't know. But for the first time in months, I felt something that resembled hope. Or if not hope exactly, then at least possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward that I hadn't been able to see before. When we got home, I carried a sleepy Jasmine inside and tucked her into bed. She mumbled something about having fun with Grandma Dot as I pulled the covers up to her chin and kissed her forehead. "I love you, baby girl," I whispered. "Love you too, Mommy," she murmured, already drifting back to sleep. I went to my own room and sat on the edge of my bed, suddenly exhausted. It had been an emotional day. I reached for my phone to set my alarm for the morning, and that's when I felt it. A small piece of paper in my coat pocket. I pulled it out, confused. I didn't remember putting anything in my pocket. It was a folded piece of notebook paper, and when I opened it, I immediately recognized Grandma's distinctive handwriting. Careful and neat, the letters slightly slanted to the right. My hands started shaking as I read, "My dearest Maya, I wanted to make sure you had these written down, so you can look at them whenever you need to remember. 1. Accept what is. 2. Act on what you can control. 3. Trust that you're stronger than you think. Baby girl, I know right now it feels like you're drowning. I know it feels like you'll never find your way back to solid ground. But I also know something you don't seem to know about yourself. You come from a long line of women who survived impossible things. Your great-great-grandmother survived slavery and lived to see her children free. Your great-grandmother raised 8 children during the Depression and never let a single one go hungry. Your grandmother, that's me, lost the love of her life at 40 and still managed to build a good life for her children. And your mother, God rest her soul, fought cancer for 3 years with more grace and courage than anyone I've ever known. You have that same strength in you, Maya. It's in your blood. It's in your bones. It's in the way you get up every morning and take care of your daughter, even when you feel like falling apart. That's not weakness, baby. That's power. This won't break you. I promise you that. This will make you stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. You're going to come through this, and when you do, you're going to be amazed at who you've become. I believe in you with every fiber of my being. Now you just need to start believing in yourself. All my love, Grandma.PS. When did I slip this in your pocket, you ask? A grandmother has her secrets. Just know that I love you, and I'm always here if you need me. I read the note 3 times, tears streaming down my face. But these weren't tears of despair. They were tears of gratitude, of love, of that tiny spark of hope beginning to grow into something stronger. She believed in me. My grandmother, the strongest, wisest person I knew, believed I could get through this. Maybe that was enough to start with. Maybe I could borrow her belief in me until I found my own. I carefully folded the note and placed it on my nightstand, right next to my phone where I'd see it first thing in the morning. Then I grabbed a small notebook from my desk drawer and opened it to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote in large letters T-Tari Pre-N-C-I-P-S, then underneath accept what is. Act on what you can control. Trust that you're stronger than you think. I stared at those words for a long time. Then beneath them, I started writing. What is my reality right now? I don't have a job. My savings are running out. I'm a single mother with bills to pay. I'm scared and overwhelmed. That was accepting what is, not sugarcoating it, not pretending, just acknowledging the truth of my situation. Next, what can I control? I can keep applying for jobs. I can look into freelance work. I can create a strict budget. I can take care of my health so I'm strong enough to keep going. I can be present for Jasmine. I can ask for help when I need it. As I wrote that last point, I felt something release in my chest. Ask for help. I'd been so determined to prove I could handle everything alone that I'd isolated myself. But maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe real strength wasn't about doing everything by yourself. Maybe it was about knowing when to reach out. Finally, why am I stronger than I think? I hesitated over this one. It felt almost arrogant to write down reasons why I was strong. But then I thought about what Grandma had said, about our family, about the women who came before me, about the strength that was already inside me whether I acknowledged it or not. So I wrote, I've already survived losing my marriage and my job. I'm still here. I show up for Jasmine every single day no matter how hard it is. I come from strong women who survived impossible things. I'm educated, talented, and capable. I haven't given up yet, even when I wanted to. Reading back over what I'd written, I felt something shift inside me. These weren't just empty platitudes or wishful thinking. These were facts. These were truths about my situation and about myself that I'd been too consumed by fear and shame to see clearly. I still didn't know how everything was going to work out. I still didn't have a job or enough money or any guarantee that things would get better. But for the first time in months, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I had a roadmap. A way to think about my situation that didn't leave me paralyzed with anxiety. I closed the notebook and placed it next to Grandma's note on my nightstand. Tomorrow, I would start implementing these principles. Tomorrow, I would begin the hard work of rebuilding my life, one small action at a time. But tonight, I was going to do something I hadn't done in far too long. I was going to sleep without that crushing weight of despair on my chest. As I lay in bed, the room dark except for the glow of streetlights filtering through my curtains, I whispered into the darkness, "Thank you, Grandma. Thank you for reminding me who I am." And for the first time in months, I fell asleep feeling something that resembled peace. I woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through my window and the sound of Jasmine singing softly in her room. For a moment, I lay there, disoriented. Something felt different, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what. Then I saw it, Grandma's note on my nightstand, and my notebook beside it. The 3 principles, the promise I'd made to myself the night before. The weight of my problems hadn't magically disappeared. I still didn't have a job. The bills were still piling up. But somehow, the panic that usually gripped me the moment I opened my eyes wasn't quite as overwhelming. It was still there, yes, but it felt more manageable. Like something I could face instead of something that would drown me. I picked up the note and read it again, letting Grandma's words sink in. You come from a long line of women who survived impossible things. Okay, I thought. Let's start with principle number 1, accept what is. I sat up in bed and took a deep breath. I don't have a job, I said aloud to my empty room. My bank account is running low. I'm scared. And that's okay. That's where I am right now. This is my reality and I accept it. Saying it out loud felt strange at first, almost like admitting defeat. But as the words hung in the air, I realized it wasn't defeat at all. It was clarity. For months, I'd been fighting against my reality, exhausting myself trying to pretend things weren't as bad as they were. But accepting the truth, facing it head on, freed up all that wasted energy for actually doing something about it. Which brought me to principle number 2, act on what you can control. I grabbed my notebook and opened to a fresh page. At the top I wrote Friday, November 29th, things I can control today. Then I started listing. Make breakfast for Jasmine, go for a 30-minute walk, revise my resume to focus on freelance opportunities, reach out to 5 former colleagues about potential contract work, create a detailed budget for December, research local resources for single mothers, play a board game with Jasmine this evening. Nothing on that list was going to solve all my problems overnight. But each item was something concrete, something I could actually do. Small actions that were within my control. I felt my chest loosen a little more. I had a plan. Not a perfect plan, not a plan that guaranteed success, but a plan nonetheless. And that was something. "Mummy," Jasmine called from her room. "Can we have pancakes?" I smiled. A real, genuine smile. "Yes, baby. Pancakes coming right up." As I made breakfast, I found myself moving with more purpose than I had in weeks. I wasn't just going through the motions, I was present, engaged, making a choice to show up fully for this moment with my daughter. Jasmine chattered happily about her cousins while we ate, and I listened, really listened, instead of letting my mind spiral into anxious thoughts about the future. This, I realized, was also part of accepting what is. Being here in this moment, with my daughter who loved me and needed me, instead of being trapped in my head worrying about things that hadn't happened yet. After breakfast, while Jasmine played with her dolls, I sat down at my laptop with a cup of coffee and pulled up my resume. I'd been sending out the same standard resume to every job posting, highlighting my 8 years at Davidson and Brooks and my marketing degree. But looking at it now with fresh eyes, I realized it was all wrong. I wasn't going to find another full-time corporate job overnight. The market was too competitive, and I had that gap in my employment that made hiring managers nervous. But what if I stopped trying to fit back into that mold? What if I focused on something I could actually control right now? Freelance work. I spent the next 2 hours completely rewriting my resume and creating a simple one-page portfolio. Instead of emphasizing my role at one company, I highlighted specific projects I'd completed, brand campaigns that increased client engagement by 40%, social media strategies that tripled follower counts, email marketing sequences that boosted conversion rates. I framed everything in terms of results I could deliver for potential clients. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And more importantly, it was something I could actually send out today, right now, without waiting for permission or approval from anyone else. Next, I made a list of everyone I'd worked with over the years. Former colleagues, clients, industry contacts I'd met at conferences. People who knew my work and might know of freelance opportunities or small businesses that needed marketing help. My finger hovered over the keyboard. This was the hard part. Reaching out meant admitting I needed help. It meant making myself vulnerable, letting people know I wasn't in that stable corporate job anymore. But then I heard Grandma's voice in my head. Real strength isn't about pretending you're fine when you're not. I started typing the first email. "Hi Jennifer, I hope you're doing well. I'm reaching out because I've recently transitioned to freelance marketing consulting, and I'm building my client base. I remember you mentioning a few years ago that your sister owned a boutique. Does she need any help with her marketing or social media? I'd love to offer a free consultation if she's interested. I'd also appreciate if you could keep me in mind if you hear of any small businesses or startups looking for marketing support. Thanks so much, and I hope we can catch up soon." Maya, I read it over 3 times, my heart pounding. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I hit send. 1 down, 4 more to go. By the time I'd sent all 5 emails, my hands were shaking and I felt slightly nauseous. But I'd done it. I'd taken action. I'd reached out. I'd controlled what I could control. The afternoon passed quietly. Jasmine and I went for a walk in the neighborhood park, and I tried to focus on the feeling of cool November air on my face, the sound of her laughter as she ran ahead of me on the path, the simple beauty of autumn leaves scattered across the ground, except what is. This moment, right here. My daughter is happy and healthy. I am alive and capable. We have a roof over our heads, we have food in the refrigerator, we have each other. When we got home, I tackled the budget. This was harder, more painful. Looking at the numbers in black and white was sobering. I had enough savings to cover maybe 2 more months of rent and basic expenses. After that, no, I stopped myself. Don't spiral into future catastrophes. Focus on what you can control right now. I created a bare-bones budget for December. Cut every non-essential expense. Canceled subscriptions I didn't absolutely need. Planned meals around the cheapest healthy options. It wasn't fun, but it was doable. And more importantly, it gave me a clear picture of exactly how much money I needed to bring in to keep us afloat. That evening, as I'd promised myself, I put my laptop away and played Candyland with Jasmine. She won 3 games in a row and was absolutely delighted. "You're not very good at this game, Mommy," she said with a giggle. "No, I'm not," I agreed, laughing. "But I'm very good at playing with the best daughter in the whole world." She beamed at me, and in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: gratitude. Not for my circumstances, but for this child. This moment, this life I still had even in the midst of difficulty. That night, after Jasmine was in bed, I checked my email. My heart nearly stopped when I saw a response from Jennifer, one of the colleagues I'd reached out to that morning.
Maya, so glad to hear from you.
Yes, my sister definitely needs help with her boutique's social media. She's been trying to do it herself but has no idea what she's doing. I gave her your email and she'll be reaching out next week. She has a limited budget, but I think she could pay $500-800 a month for maybe 5-10 hours of work. Would that interest you? Also, my company is looking for someone to help with a short-term project. Rebranding our product line. It's a 6-week contract, probably 15-20 hours a week. Would you be interested? I can send over the details.
So excited that you're doing freelance work.
You were always so talented. Jen, I read the email 3 times, hardly daring to believe it. 2 potential opportunities from 1 email. Not huge, not career-defining, but real. Actual paid work that could help keep us afloat. My first instinct was to doubt. To worry that the boutique owner wouldn't actually hire me, that the contract work wouldn't pan out, that something would go wrong. But then I stopped myself. No, that wasn't accepting what is. That was creating problems that didn't exist yet. What is? Someone responded positively. 2 real opportunities exist right now. That's all I need to know. What I can control, I can respond professionally. I can follow up. I can do excellent work if these opportunities materialize. What I need to trust, I'm capable of this work. I've done it successfully for years. I can do it again. I typed out a response to Jennifer, trying to sound confident and professional even though my hands were shaking with a mixture of anxiety and excitement.
Jen, that's wonderful news.
Yes, I'd love to work with your sister. And the contract project sounds perfect. Please send over the details and I'll get back to you with a proposal by early next week. Thank you so much for thinking of me. I really appreciate it. Maya, after I hit send, I sat back in my chair and let out a long breath. Then I reached for my notebook and wrote a Friday, November 29th. What I accomplished today: made a healthy breakfast for Jasmine, went for a walk, completely revised my resume and portfolio, reached out to 5 contacts, acted despite fear, created a realistic budget, played games with Jasmine, got a positive response with TWO potential opportunities. Looking at that list, I felt a surge of something I barely recognized: pride. I'd done all of that, me, in one day, while scared, while uncertain, while still dealing with all the same problems I'd woken up with. But I'd done it anyway. I'd acted on what I could control. I picked up Grandma's note one more time before bed and read the PS again. I believe in you with every fiber of my being. Now you just need to start believing in yourself. I'm trying, Grandma, I whispered. I'm really trying. And as I fell asleep that night, I realized something important. I didn't need to believe in myself completely or perfectly. I just needed to believe enough to take the next small step and then the next one. And then the next. One day at a time. One action at a time. One small victory at a time. Maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The next 3 months were the hardest of my life, but they were also the most transformative. Jennifer's sister, Keisha, hired me to manage social media for her boutique, Threads and Treasures. The pay was modest, $600 a month for about 8 hours of work a week, but it was something. Real income. Proof that I could still do this work, that someone valued my skills. The contract project with Jennifer's company came through too. 6 weeks of rebranding work at $40 an hour, 15 hours a week. It wasn't a full-time salary, but combined with Keisha's boutique, it was enough to cover rent and groceries for December and January. I wanted to feel relieved, I wanted to celebrate. But the truth was, I was terrified. What if I failed? What if my work wasn't good enough? What if they regretted hiring me and I lost these opportunities too? The Sunday night before I was supposed to start both projects, I sat at my kitchen table, paralyzed with anxiety. My laptop was open in front of me, but I couldn't seem to make my fingers type. My chest felt tight, my breath shallow. I pulled out Grandma's note and read it for what must have been the 100th time. Accept what is. Act on what you can control. Trust that you're stronger than you think. I'd accept what is. I'm scared. I'm doubting myself, and that's okay. Fear doesn't mean I'm incapable. It just means I care about doing well. Act on what I can control. I can prepare. I can do the research. I can show up and do my absolute best work. Trust that I'm stronger than I think. I've done this work successfully for 8 years. I know what I'm doing. I just need to trust that knowledge and experience. I took a deep breath and started working. One small task at a time. Research Keisha's target audience. Analyze her competitors' social media. Draft a content calendar. Each task was manageable on its own, even if the whole project felt overwhelming. By midnight, I had a solid plan for the boutique's social media strategy. It wasn't perfect, but it was good. Really good, actually. I felt that old familiar spark. The satisfaction of creating something effective, of solving a problem with creativity and strategy. Maybe I could do this after all. The first few weeks were exhausting. I'd wake up at 5:30 before Jasmine to get in a few hours of work. Then I'd get her ready for school, drop her off, and work until pickup time. Evenings were for dinner, homework, and quality time with my daughter. After she went to bed, I'd work for another 2 or 3 hours. It was grueling. Some nights I fell into bed so tired I couldn't even think, but it was also empowering. I was taking care of us. I was using my skills and talents. I was building something, even if I didn't know exactly what that something was yet. Keisha loved the social media strategy I implemented. Within 3 weeks, her boutique's Instagram following had doubled, and she'd gotten several new customers who specifically mentioned finding her through social media. "Maya, this is incredible," she gushed during one of our weekly check-in calls. "I've been struggling with this for 2 years, and you made it look so easy. Would you be interested in taking on more hours? I can probably go up to 900 a month, if you can also help me with email marketing." I said yes before I could overthink it. More hours meant less time with Jasmine, but it also meant more financial stability. I'd figure out the balance. The rebranding project was more challenging. The team I was working with was demanding, and the timeline was tight. There were days when I felt completely overwhelmed, certain I'd bitten off more than I could chew. One Tuesday in mid-December, I had a particularly brutal day. The client rejected my third round of concepts, asking for a complete revision with a 48-hour turnaround. I'd already planned to spend that evening at Jasmine's school holiday concert, and I didn't want to miss it. I sat in my car in the school parking lot after drop-off, trying not to cry. I couldn't do it all. I couldn't be a good mother and a good freelancer and a functioning adult who remembered to pay bills and buy groceries. Something had to give. I called Grandma. She answered on the second ring. "Maya, baby, I was just thinking about you. How are you doing?" And just like that, I started crying. Not the desperate, hopeless sobs from Thanksgiving, but tired, frustrated tears. "I'm trying, Grandma. I'm really trying to follow your principles and keep going, but it's so hard. I don't know how to balance everything. I feel like I'm failing at everything." "Tell me what's going on," she said gently. I explained about the client revision, about Jasmine's concert, about feeling stretched so thin I might snap. "Okay," Grandma said when I finished. "Let me ask you something. What would happen if you went to that concert tonight and worked on the revisions after Jasmine goes to bed?" "I'd be up until 3 in the morning." "Would you meet the deadline?" "Yes, but I'd be exhausted." "And what would happen if you missed the concert to work instead?" I was quiet for a moment. Jasmine would be heartbroken. She's been practicing her songs for weeks. She keeps asking if I'll be there. "So it sounds like you already know the answer," Grandma said softly. "You go to that concert, you sit in the front row and you cheer for your daughter. You let her see that she's your priority. And then you come home, you put her to bed, and you do the work. Yes, you'll be tired. But Maya, you've been tired before. You can handle tired. What if the work isn't good enough? What if I'm too exhausted to think clearly? Then you do your best with what you have. That's all any of us can do. Accept what is. You're one person with limited time and energy. Act on what you can control. Prioritize what matters most and do excellent work within your constraints. Trust that you're stronger than you think. You can handle one late night." I wiped my eyes. "When did you get so wise?" She laughed. "Oh baby, I've always been this wise. You're just finally ready to hear it." That night, I sat in the school auditorium and watched my daughter sing Jingle Bells with her second grade class. She was in the front row, wearing the red dress we'd gotten on sale at Target, her hair in 2 neat braids. When she spotted me in the audience, her whole face lit up and she waved so enthusiastically she nearly knocked over the kid next to her. My heart swelled with love so fierce it almost hurt. This was why I was fighting so hard. This beautiful, precious child who needed to know she was loved and valued and seen. Everything else, the client demands, the financial stress, the uncertainty, none of it mattered as much as this moment right here. After the concert, Jasmine ran up to me, breathless with excitement. "Did you see me, Mommy? Did I do good?" "You were perfect," I said, scooping her up in a hug. "The best singer up there. Can we get hot chocolate on the way home?" I thought about my tight budget, about the $6 that hot chocolate for both of us would cost. Then I thought about Grandma's principles. Accept what is. I have enough money for this small treat. Act on what I can control. I can choose to create a happy memory with my daughter. Trust that I'm stronger than I think. I can work late and still show up for her. "Absolutely," I said. "Hot chocolate it is." We stopped at a little cafe near our apartment. Jasmine chattered happily about the concert, about her friends, about what she wanted for Christmas. I listened and smiled and treasured every second, even as part of my brain was already thinking about the work waiting for me at home. By 9 o'clock, Jasmine was asleep and I was at my laptop. I worked steadily through the night, fueled by coffee and determination. The concepts came together slowly, but they came. By 2:30 in the morning, I had something I was actually proud of, not just adequate but good. Really good. I sent the files to the client, set my alarm for 7, and collapsed into bed. The next morning was brutal. I was running on 4 hours of sleep and felt like I'd been hit by a truck. But Jasmine woke up happy, still buzzing about the concert, and that made it worth it. The client approved my concepts that afternoon. No revisions needed. They loved them. I wanted to feel triumphant, but mostly I just felt relieved and tired. So very tired. But I'd done it. I'd balanced competing demands. I'd made tough choices. I'd shown up for what mattered, delivered quality work under pressure. Small victories. That's what Grandma had talked about. Not dramatic transformations or overnight success, but small victories that accumulate over time. January arrived cold and gray, but something in my life had shifted. The 6-week contract project ended successfully, and Jennifer's company asked if I'd be interested in additional freelance work on an as-needed basis. Keisha increased my hours again, and she referred me to 2 other small business owners who needed marketing help. By mid-January, I had 4 steady clients and was bringing in about $3,200 a month. It wasn't the $5,500 I'd made at Davidson & Brooks, but it was enough. Enough to pay rent, buy groceries, keep the lights on, and even put a little bit into savings. More importantly, I was starting to believe in myself again. I'd been practicing Grandma's 3 principles every single day for almost 2 months, and they'd become like a mantra I could return to whenever things got hard. And things did get hard. Constantly. Clients with impossible demands, late-night work sessions, the constant juggling of motherhood and business, the loneliness of working from home with no coworkers to laugh with during lunch breaks. But I was handling it. Not perfectly, but I was handling it. One Saturday morning in late January, I was working at my kitchen table when Jasmine came padding out of her room in her pajamas, dragging her favorite stuffed rabbit. "Mommy, are you working again?" she asked, her voice small. I looked up from my laptop and saw something in her face that made my heart squeeze. Not anger or resentment, but resignation. Like she'd accepted that this was just how things were now. Mommy was always working. I closed my laptop immediately. Not anymore. "What do you want to do today, baby?" She perked up a little. "Really? You're done working? Really? Today is all about you and me. What should we do?" Her face broke into a huge smile. "Can we go to the museum, the one with the dinosaurs?" I thought about the work I had waiting, about the emails I needed to answer, about the social media posts I should be scheduling. Then I thought about Grandma's principles. Accept what is. My daughter needs me. Act on what I can control. I can choose to be present today and work tomorrow. Trust that I'm stronger than you think. I can handle being a little behind on work. "The dinosaur museum it is," I said. "Go get dressed in something warm. We'll leave in 30 minutes. We spent the entire day at the Field Museum. Jasmine was enthralled by the dinosaur skeletons, asking a million questions I couldn't answer. We ate overpriced pizza in the museum cafe and laughed at the funny faces people made when they thought no one was watching. We took silly selfies in front of the T-Rex. It was perfect. Normal. The kind of day I'd almost forgotten we could have. On the train ride home, Jasmine fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. I looked down at her peaceful face and felt gratitude wash over me. Yes, things were hard. Yes, I was working more hours than I wanted to. Yes, there was still so much uncertainty about the future. But we were okay. We were together. We were making it work. When we got home, there was a message on my phone from a number I didn't recognize. I listened to the voicemail while Jasmine got ready for bed. "Hi Maya, my name is David Chen. I got your name from Keisha at Threads and Treasures. She raved about the work you did for her boutique. I own a small tech startup and we're looking for someone to handle all our marketing. Social media, email campaigns, website content, everything. It would be about 25 hours a week, and we can pay $50 an hour. If you're interested, please give me a call back. Thanks." I played the message 3 times, my heart racing. 25 hours a week at $50 an hour. That was $5,000 a month from one client. Combined with my other clients, I'd actually be making more than I had at my old corporate job. My first instinct was excitement, but it was quickly followed by fear. That many hours for one client felt risky. What if they didn't like my work? What if they canceled the contract and I suddenly lost most of my income? What if I couldn't handle the workload? I realized I was spiraling and forced myself to stop, to breathe, to return to the principles. Accept what is. This is an opportunity, not a guarantee. It could work out or it might not. Act on what I can control. I can call him back. I can have a conversation. I can make an informed decision based on actual information rather than fear. Trust that I'm stronger than I think. I've successfully taken on new clients before. I can do it again. I called him back the next morning. David was enthusiastic and warm, explaining that his startup was developing an app to help small businesses manage their finances. They'd been trying to handle their own marketing but realized they needed professional help. "Keisha showed me the Instagram strategy you created for her," he said. "The way you positioned her boutique, the content themes, the engagement tactics, it was exactly what we need." Smart but not pretentious, professional but authentic. We talked for 45 minutes about his company, his vision, his goals. I found myself getting excited about the project, asking questions, already thinking about strategies that might work. I'd love to work with you, I said finally. Can I send you a proposal by Wednesday? That would be great. And Maya, Keisha told me a little about your situation, that you're building a freelance business. I just want you to know that we're looking for a long-term relationship here, not just a quick project. If this works out, we'd want to keep you on as we grow. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my phone. This was real. This was actually happening. I was building something, not just patching together survival money, but actually creating a business, a career, a new path forward. I spent the next 2 days working on the proposal. I researched the fintech industry, analyzed their competitors, developed a comprehensive marketing strategy. It was some of my best work, creative, strategic, thorough. On Wednesday morning, I sent the proposal to David. By that afternoon, he'd accepted. We'd start the following Monday. I wanted to call someone to share my excitement, to celebrate. I called Grandma. That's wonderful, baby, she said when I told her. See, I knew you could do this. I couldn't have done it without you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Without that conversation at Thanksgiving, without your note, without those 3 principles, I'd still be drowning in self-pity. Oh honey, you'd have found your way eventually. You're too strong not to. I just gave you a little roadmap, that's all. It was more than a little roadmap, Grandma. It saved my life. She was quiet for a moment. You know what I think? I think you saved your own life, Maya. You did the hard work. You showed up every day even when you didn't want to. You pushed through fear and doubt and exhaustion. You did that, baby. Not me. You. After we hung up, I thought about what she'd said. She was right in a way. The principles had given me a framework, but I'd done the actual work of implementing them. I'd made the difficult choices. I'd taken the scary steps. I'd kept going when everything in me wanted to give up. Maybe that was what strength really was. Not the absence of fear or difficulty, but the willingness to keep moving forward despite them. That weekend, I took Jasmine to visit Grandma. When we pulled up to the familiar brick house, I felt a wave of emotion. The last time I'd been here, I was broken, desperate, seeing no way forward. Now, just 2 months later, everything had changed. Not everything, I corrected myself. My circumstances had changed. But more importantly, I had changed. The way I thought about challenges, the way I approached problems, the way I saw myself, all of it was different. Grandma met us at the door and I hugged her tight. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for everything. You're welcome, sweetheart. But remember, you did this. You chose to keep going. You chose to believe you could. We spent the afternoon in her kitchen, drinking tea while Jasmine played in the backyard. I told Grandma about the new client, about the other work I'd been doing, about the small business I was slowly building. I'm proud of you, she said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. But more importantly, I hope you're proud of yourself. I am, I said, surprised to realize it was true. For the first time in a long time, I actually am. As we were getting ready to leave, Grandma pressed something into my hand, another folded note. What's this? I asked. Just a little reminder, for the next time things get hard, because they will, you know, life is like that. But now you know you can handle it. I opened the note in the car after Jasmine fell asleep on the drive home. It read, Maya, you did it. You took 3 simple principles and used them to transform your life. But here's the thing I need you to understand. Those principles aren't just for when things are bad, they're for always. Keep accepting what is, not just in crisis but every day. Accept joy when it comes. Accept success. Accept that you deserve good things. Keep acting on what you can control. Keep making choices that align with your values. Keep showing up for what matters. And please, please keep trusting that you're stronger than you think. Because baby girl, you haven't even scratched the surface of what you're capable of. I love you always, Grandma. P.S. I knew you'd make it through. I never doubted you for a second. I folded the note carefully and added it to the first one, which I now kept in my wallet. 2 notes. 2 reminders that I wasn't alone, that I came from strength, that I could handle whatever came next. February was busy but good. I officially formed my own LLC, Richardson Marketing Solutions. It felt official, real, like I was actually a business owner and not just someone cobbling together freelance work. I created a simple website, printed business cards, set up proper bookkeeping. The work with David's startup was challenging but rewarding. I was developing comprehensive marketing strategies, creating content, managing their social media presence, analyzing data to optimize our approach. It was everything I'd loved about my old job, but with more autonomy and creativity. My other clients were happy too. Keisha's boutique was thriving. The 2 referrals she'd sent me were both expanding their services with me. Word was spreading, good work led to more work. By the end of February, I was making $60,000 a month, more than my old salary, and while I was working hard, really hard, I had flexibility I'd never had before. I could take Jasmine to her doctor's appointments without asking permission. I could volunteer in her classroom. I could adjust my schedule around what mattered most. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building a life I actually wanted. By the time autumn arrived in 2025, nearly a year had passed since that devastating Thanksgiving when I'd sat in Grandma's pantry feeling like my life was over. It was a crisp October evening, and I was sitting in my new apartment. Not the cramped two-bedroom where I'd spent those dark months, but a bright, cheerful three-bedroom in a better neighborhood with a small balcony where Jasmine loved to play. We'd moved in August, and it still gave me a thrill every time I walked through the door. Richardson Marketing Solutions was thriving. I had 8 steady clients now, including David's startup, which had just secured Series A funding and expanded my contract. I'd hired a part-time assistant to help with administrative work. My calendar was full, but manageable. I was making nearly $8,000 a month, and for the first time in my life, I actually had a healthy savings account. But the numbers weren't what mattered most. What mattered was that I'd found something I didn't even know I was looking for. Confidence. Not the superficial kind I'd had before, based on job titles and external validation, but something deeper. A quiet certainty that I could handle whatever life threw at me, because I'd already survived the worst. And I'd done more than survive, I'd transformed. Jasmine burst into the living room, interrupting my thoughts. She was 8 now, taller and more confident herself.
Mommy, Grandma Dot is on the phone.
She wants to know if we're still coming for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving. A full year had passed. I took the phone from Jasmine. Hi, Grandma, I said, warmth flooding my chest at the sound of her voice.
Maya, sweetheart.
I was just confirming you and Jasmine will be here. Your daddy says the whole family is coming this year. All 25 of us. We wouldn't miss it for anything, I said. Actually, Grandma, I was wondering if I could come a little early. Maybe Wednesday afternoon. There's something I want to talk to you about. Of course, baby. You know you're always welcome. Is everything okay? Everything's wonderful, I said honestly. I just want to spend some time with you, just us. A Wednesday afternoon, I dropped Jasmine off at my dad's house and drove to Grandma's alone. She was waiting on the porch when I arrived, just like she had been a year ago. But this time I wasn't arriving broken and desperate. I was arriving whole. She pulled me into a hug and I held on tight, breathing in that familiar vanilla and lavender scent. Let me look at you, she said, pulling back. Her eyes scanned my face, and there she is. There's my Maya. You look like yourself again. I feel like myself again, I said. Better than myself, actually. Like a version of me I didn't know existed. We settled in her kitchen with tea, sitting at the same table where she'd told me stories of her own struggles a year ago. I want to tell you something, I began. I want to tell you what the past year has been like. And I want to thank you properly for what you did for me. Maya, you don't need to. Please, Grandma, let me say this. She nodded, her eyes already glistening. A year ago, I sat in your pantry and told you I couldn't do it anymore. I meant it. I really believed my life was over, that I'd failed at everything that mattered. And you gave me those 3 principles. Accept what is, act on what you can control, trust that you're stronger than you think. At the time, I didn't know if they'd help. They seemed too simple to solve something so complicated. I paused, collecting my thoughts. But they weren't too simple. They were exactly what I needed. Because the problem wasn't that my life was too complicated. It was that I'd made it complicated by fighting against reality, by trying to control things I couldn't, and by believing I was too weak to handle difficulty. A grandma reached across the table and took my hand. Those principles became my anchor, I continued. Every single day, sometimes multiple times a day, I'd come back to them. When a client rejected my work, when I was up at 2 in the morning finishing a project, when I felt like I couldn't balance everything. I'd stop and ask myself, what is my reality right now? What can I actually control? Am I trusting in my own strength? And it worked. Grandma asked softly. It worked, I said, my voice catching. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but it worked. Within 2 months, I had built a freelance business. Within 6 months, I was making more than my old salary. Within 9 months, I'd moved into a better apartment and had more clients than I could handle alone. I pulled out my wallet and showed her the 2 notes she'd written, now worn at the edges from being read so many times. I carry these everywhere, I said. They've gotten me through so many hard moments. But Grandma, I need you to understand something. It wasn't just the principles. It was you. It was knowing that someone I loved and respected had been where I was and had made it through. It was your belief in me when I had no belief in myself. Tears were streaming down both our faces now. You saved my life, I said simply. I don't know how else to say it. You gave me a roadmap when I was completely lost, and you reminded me that I came from strength, that I had strength. And because of that, I kept going. I built something new. I became someone stronger. Grandma stood and came around the table, pulling me into her arms. We stood there in her kitchen, holding each other and crying. Not tears of sadness, but tears of joy and gratitude and love. I'm so proud of you, she whispered, so incredibly proud. But Maya, I need you to hear this. You did the hard work, you showed up every day. You made the difficult choices. You built that business. You raised your daughter. You transformed your life. Those principles were just tools. You're the one who used them. We spent the rest of the afternoon talking. I told her about my clients, about my plans to expand the business, about how Jasmine was thriving, about how I'd started dating again. Nothing serious, but I was open to possibilities in a way I hadn't been before. She told me more stories from her own journey, filling in details I'd never known. About the time she almost gave up on her teaching degree. About the principal who believed in her and gave her a chance. About the slow, steady climb from survival to stability to actual joy. The thing about hard times, she said as the afternoon sun slanted through her kitchen window, is that they teach us who we really are. Not who we pretend to be or who we wish we were, but who we actually are when everything is stripped away. And Maya, you learned that you're someone strong and capable and resilient. That knowledge, that's something nobody can ever take from you. I want to do something, I said suddenly. I want to write about this, about the principles, about the journey, about how to rebuild when everything falls apart. Maybe a blog or articles or something. Because if your wisdom helped me, maybe it could help other people too. Grandma's face lit up. I think that's a wonderful idea. The world needs more stories about real people overcoming real challenges. Not fairy tales where everything magically works out, but honest stories about hard work and persistence and the power of the right perspective. That night, after I left Grandma's house, I sat in my car for a few minutes before driving to my dad's to pick up Jasmine. I thought about everything that had happened in the past year. All the late nights and hard decisions. All the fears I'd pushed through. All the small victories that had accumulated into something bigger. A year ago, I'd thought my life was over. But it wasn't over. It was just beginning. I'd lost a marriage and a job, yes, but I'd gained something far more valuable. I'd gained myself. The real me, the strong me. The me who could face difficulty and not just survive it, but transform because of it. Thanksgiving Day was as chaotic and wonderful as family gatherings always were at Grandma's house. But this year, I wasn't just going through the motions or forcing smiles. I was genuinely happy, genuinely grateful. When Grandma stood to say grace, she caught my eye across the crowded table and smiled. Lord, she began, we thank you for this food and for this family. We thank you for the blessings in our lives. But we especially thank you for the challenges that reveal our strength, for the struggles that teach us resilience, and for the difficult seasons that ultimately lead us to new growth. We are grateful for where we are, and we're grateful for the journey that brought us here. Amen. Amen, I echoed, my heart full. After dinner, as I was helping clean up, several of my aunts approached me. Maya, you look wonderful, Aunt Sharon said. Your dad told us about your business. We're so proud of you. Thank you, I said. It's been quite a year. I actually wanted to ask you something. Aunt Cheryl chimed in. My friend owns a nonprofit and they need marketing help. Would you be interested? I smiled. A year ago I would have felt desperate, would have said yes immediately out of fear that the opportunity might disappear. Now I felt calm, confident. I'd be happy to have a conversation with her, I said. Let me give you my card. I pulled out one of my business cards, professional, simple, with my company name and contact information. Looking at it, I felt a surge of pride. This was mine. I'd built this. Later that evening, as families started heading home, I found Grandma in her living room, settling into her favorite armchair by the window. Can I sit with you for a minute? I asked. Always, baby. I sat on the ottoman near her chair, the same way I used to when I was a little girl listening to her stories. I was just thinking, I said, about last year. About how different everything is now. And I realized something. What's that? The best thing that ever happened to me was losing everything. Because it forced me to find out who I really was. It forced me to build something new, something better. Something that was actually mine. If I'd stayed in that corporate job, if Marcus hadn't left, if everything had stayed comfortable and predictable, I never would have discovered what I was capable of. Grandma nodded slowly. That's wisdom right there. Not many people can see their hardships as gifts, but that's exactly what they are. Painful gifts maybe, gifts we didn't ask for, but gifts nonetheless. I want you to know, I said, taking her hand, that those 3 principles you gave me, they're not just something I used to get through a crisis. They're how I live now. Every day. When things are good and when things are hard. Accept what is. Act on what I can control. Trust that I'm stronger than I think. That's my foundation now. Then my work here is done. Grandma said with a smile. You've taken what I gave you and made it your own. That's all any grandmother could hope for, to pass along wisdom that actually helps. As I drove home that night with a sleepy Jasmine in the back seat, I thought about the journey I'd been on. 12 months ago, I'd been drowning. Now I was thriving. Not because my circumstances were perfect, they weren't. Not because I never struggled anymore, I did. But because I'd learned how to navigate difficulty with grace and strength. I'd learned to accept reality without being defeated by it. I'd learned to focus my energy on what I could actually control instead of wasting it on worry and fear. And most importantly, I'd learned to trust in my own resilience, my own capability, my own strength. These weren't just principles anymore, they were part of who I was. When I got home and tucked Jasmine into bed, she looked up at me with her big brown eyes. "Mommy, I'm thankful for you," she said sleepily. "You're the best mommy ever?" "I'm thankful for you too, baby girl," I said, kissing her forehead. "You're my everything." After she fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd read Grandma's first note almost exactly a year ago, and I pulled out a notebook. I started writing. How to survive when everything falls apart. 3 principles that changed my life. I wrote about hitting rock bottom, about the conversation in Grandma's pantry, about the 3 principles and how I'd learned to apply them, about the slow, difficult climb from despair to stability to actual joy. I wrote for 2 hours, the words flowing easily. When I finally stopped, I had the outline for what would eventually become a series of blog posts, and eventually, a book. Because Grandma was right. The world needed more honest stories about overcoming real challenges. Stories that didn't promise easy solutions or overnight transformations, but instead offered practical wisdom and genuine hope. Stories that said, yes, life can be devastatingly hard. Yes, you might lose everything you thought defined you. But also, you're stronger than you think. You can rebuild. You can transform. You can not just survive, but thrive. I looked at the framed photo on my kitchen counter. A picture from that Thanksgiving day, showing 3 generations: Grandma Dot, me, and Jasmine, all smiling at the camera. 3 generations of strong women. 3 generations of survivors. I picked up my phone and sent Grandma a text. "Thank you for everything. I love you more than words can say. You changed my life." Her response came a few minutes later. "You changed your own life, sweetheart. I just reminded you that you could. I love you too, always." I set my phone down and looked around my apartment, at the space I'd created, at the life I'd built, at the future full of possibility stretching out before me. A year ago, I thought I'd lost everything. But I hadn't lost everything. I'd lost some things, yes. But I'd found something far more valuable. I'd found myself. The real me, the strong me, the me who could face any challenge and not just survive it, but grow from it. And that was worth more than any corporate job or comfortable marriage or predictable life could ever be. I pulled out Grandma's notes one more time and read them both front to back. Then I added a note of my own: accept what is. Act on what you can control. Trust that you're stronger than you think. These 3 principles saved my life. They gave me a roadmap when I was lost, strength when I was weak, and hope when I had none. But more than that, they taught me that transformation doesn't require magic or luck or perfect circumstances. It just requires willingness. Willingness to face reality, willingness to take action, and willingness to believe in your own capability. If you're reading this while going through your own dark time, please know you can do this. You're stronger than you think. You come from a long line of survivors. And one day, you'll look back on this moment and realize that losing everything was actually the beginning of finding yourself. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Keep going. You've got this. I closed the notebook and sat back, feeling a profound sense of peace. My journey wasn't over. Life would continue to bring challenges and changes and unexpected turns. But now I knew I could handle them. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all: real strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up. It's about accepting where you are, acting on what you can control, and trusting that you have everything you need inside you to face whatever comes next. Grandma had given me 3 simple principles. And those 3 principles had given me my life back.